Eastern Time. That's the latest from the firing room. Megan, back.
Thank you, Derek. I mean, astronauts aboard the Orion spacecraft for this flight test, but there are some passengers there with very important missions.
Inside the Orion spacecraft, as we fly around the moon, we have some cool experiments going on to help us understand what the environment is like.
Although there's no humans aboard Artemis 1, we do have a few special passengers aboard that will help us pave the way for future Artemis missions.
So there's basically 3 occupants riding kind of astronauts. We have a mannequin. We will also have 2 torsos that are learning about the moon and learning about the environment for our astronauts before they go.
We have a mannequin on Artemis 1. We call him our Moonikin for short.
That Moonikin is called Commander Moonikin Campos.
The name is actually in homage to Arturo Campos,
who was an important person who helped bring the Apollo 13 capsule home. The Moonikin will sit in the commander's seat, and it will wear a suit just like our astronauts will wear.
Moonikin Campos is actually weighted to simulate an actual human aboard the Orion spacecraft.
So it will help us understand what our astronauts will experience as they go to the moon and home.
The Orion Crew Survival System suit and the Orion seat were designed simultaneously to fit together as a seamless package. The actual design of the suit was built into the Orion seat, such that when they're in the suit, in the seat is a true cocoon of protection for them. During this test flight, the seat will actually be instrumented with accelerometers.
Sensors that tell us how much the chair is shaking during entry and how many G-forces or gravitational forces it experiences.
We expect Commander Moonikin Campos to have a very exciting ride way to orbit. The thrill of launch, the experience of weightlessness, the excitement. What we learn on Artemis 1 with our mannequin that are human, both and for launch to allow us to ensure their safety.
In addition to the Moonikin, we'll have 2 seats that have basically what's like a human dummy, an upper torso that are detecting how much radiation they're experiencing.
It's called the Matryoshka Astrorad Radiation Experiment, MARE. MARE is an international collaboration with German aerospace and Israel Space Agency. Our experiment consists of 2 anthropomorphic phantoms called Helga and Zohar that are simulating a female radiation environment.
One of those will be wearing a safety vest,
the Astrorad radiation vest,
that we hope will help protect our astronauts from radiation.
Each one of the 2 phantoms will be equipped with about 20 battery-operated radiation instruments.
So between the 2, we'll be able to determine how well we can protect our astronauts from radiation events.
Space radiation is a mix of high-energy heavy charge particles that originate from the sun. To put things in perspective, 1 year of Earth exposure to cosmic rays is equivalent with 1 day of space radiation exposure in deep space. The purpose of the MARA experiment is to learn more about the radiation exposure as well as the biological effects of different organs.
So basically, it's like we have 3 occupants inside Orion that are learning about the moon and learning about the environment for astronauts before they go.
Going back to the moon with new exploration goals and new technologies will help us gain better understanding of the challenges we encounter with deep space exploration.
We will have to develop new technology and solutions to meet really difficult challenges. But that's what NASA does. That's what Artemis is all about.
And we have one more passenger to tell you about. It's everyone's favorite beagle that's had a special connection with NASA ever since Apollo.
Artemis is NASA's plan to go back to the moon, and Snoopy is to be the zero gravity indicator.
A zero-G or zero gravity indicator demonstrates the moment that the crew in the spacecraft reach weightlessness.
Snoopy is about to take his first trip around the moon.
The relationship with NASA and Snoopy goes back about 50 years since the Apollo days.
He was the face of the safety campaign,
the icon for NASA's culture of safety and mission success. So NASA and Peanuts have a Space Act agreement.
and we collaborate together on STEM content. And we really were excited when it was decided that Snoopy would be the zero gravity indicator on Artemis 1. We wanted to go all out, so we created a custom Snoopy.
And the spacesuit is actually made out of material worn by the NASA astronauts.
Everything was done with extreme detail. They cut patterns for his suit, even how his collar worked and how the NASA meatball logo looked.
And we're very excited. I'm personally very excited.
I can't contain the excitement I am feeling about this day. Snoopy is going farther in space than he's ever been before.
This is the day that we've all been waiting for. It's fantastic.
And we snapped this picture of Snoopy and Orion. He's comfortable and ready for his journey to the moon. Lucky for us that Snoopy has this twin that's staying here on Earth. That way we can take a closer look at how cute he is. And this orange suit, I mean, it is amazing. It's actually the same material that would be worn by Artemis astronauts, right?
Yeah, you know, the suits we'll be wearing in Artemis ultimately are an update of the suits that the shuttle crews wore. They're this iconic orange color. And we've updated them, though, with new technologies and also new crew capabilities so that they can best protect the crew and return to the moon. I actually got to work with that suit team before my assignment.
Cool.
And so the suit's kind of near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, I think we have a picture of you wearing the suit as part of when you were helping to design it, right?
Yeah, so I was a representation from the crew office, from the astronaut office, to the engineering team that's working on putting this suit together. So I got the chance to wear it for some of the early testing, and it is an amazing suit, and it'll protect us while we're in the vehicle.
Cool. So what was your zero-G indicator?
Yeah, like the video mentioned, we always choose stuffed animals. So we actually had a turtle. We named her Fowl, which is German for peacock. And we chose that because Raj and I are from the turtle training class. So we thought it would be fun to have a sea turtle as our zero-G indicator. But we wanted to have a nod to Matthias, who is a German astronaut, so that's what we gave her a German name, and Tom, who's from the peacock class. So she's peacock colored, and it kind of works for everybody.
I was about to ask, I was like, wait, why is it German for peacock, but it's a turtle?
Yeah, exactly.
Now I get
it. Was, diplomacy, crew diplomacy.
Now I get it. So we had Turtle, we have Snoopy here. Why is it always toys?
I think the tradition goes back to crews taking stuffed animals from their children and sometimes flying the stuffed animals of their kids. That still happens to this day when a crew selects a zero-G indicator, but they're convenient because they're nice and soft. So if you're going to allow something to bounce around in the capsule, you want to make sure that it won't hurt the crew or any of the equipment.
And they're cute. I mean,
yeah,
come on.
Who doesn't want a
Makes you
mascot?
smile. Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, NASA's workforce has changed over the last 50 years. For Artemis 1 today, women make up 30% of the launch team. But when we first stepped on the moon with Apollo 11 in 1969, take a look at this picture here. You see this woman highlighted near the center there? That's going to be Joanne Morgan, and she was the only woman in the firing room. She now has a special message for the Artemis generation.
Hello, I'm Joanne Morgan, and I am so excited for Artemis 1. This flight test will bring new knowledge to people on Earth, and I'm thrilled to see such a diverse team at the LCC making it happen. Firing Room 1 is a different sight today than when I was on console for Apollo 11. I was totally focused on doing my job and never thought about being the only woman in the room. Today, women at NASA are center directors and launch and flight directors and have substantial roles in engineering, science, and technical areas. This is so important for a new generation, the Artemis generation, to see how individuals are leaders and contributors to the mission, and for youth across America and the planet to see this as well. After 50 years, it is gratifying to see this change, and I can't wait to see what you all accomplish together. New century, new generation, new mission to the moon and beyond. Godspeed, Artemis team and Artemis 1.
I think it's so great that we know she's following along and interested in this mission too.
Yeah, it's so awesome to see the women who have come before us at NASA and paved the way for a much more diverse team to contribute to these amazing missions.
Yeah. And speaking of women breaking the mold, before serving as a NASA astronaut, I know you were a naval officer and a member of the first class of women commissioned to the submarine community. How amazing is that? I mean, what would you say as you look at these pictures? What would you say to women, young girls who might be thinking, hey, I might want to join a predominantly male field?
Yeah, I was just really lucky to be in the right place at the right time. I was a senior at the Naval Academy when they announced that they were going to change the policy and allow us to serve aboard submarines. But even before that change happened, I knew that I was passionate about submarine and I was dreaming about it. So I think allowing yourself to really examine what your passions are and be brave enough that you could actually do those things. I had awesome mentors who encouraged me along the way and told me never close the door on yourself. You always want to put yourself in the roles you're most passionate about, especially if you're going to challenge yourself. Doing something you love that's hard is so much better than doing something that you're not well suited to. So I was just lucky I had some awesome leaders in my life who encouraged me to be brave enough to dream so that when those opportunities presented themselves, I was ready to take them on.
Yeah, no, that's great. Having mentors is always so important because, yes, sometimes you don't know what path to take, especially if you're blazing your own. So it's always so nice to have somebody to talk through some of that.
Absolutely.
52 minutes will be opening of the 2-hour window for Artemis 1 today. Once it soars off the launch pad, our colleagues over in Houston take over. Leah, how are things in mission control right now?
Hey, Megan, I'm here now. Thanks for joining us again here in the White Control Room here at NASA's Johnson Space Center. So you might be wondering why Johnson Space Center will control the flight of Orion after liftoff, even though it's launched at Kennedy Space Center. And that's all about how our flight control centers are designed. Launch control is at Kennedy, while mission control is in Houston. And we also have the SLS Engineering Support Center at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center. Ever since the Gemini mission in 1965, all flights have been commanded from Houston after launch. So we have the infrastructure and the experience here at Johnson Space Center to work through long duration missions, or in this case, without crew. Additionally, launches must be conducted over water rather than over populated areas, which makes Kennedy Space Center a prime location. Again, we're ready to jump into action once SLS takes flight, and this room will be staffed around the clock until Orion splashes down at the end of the mission. We're excited to continue that work today with Artemis 1 and throughout the Artemis program, but for now, we'll turn it back over to Megan and Kayla.
Now, the fully stacked SLS and Orion system was rolled from the vehicle assembly building to the launch pad about 2 weeks ago. We captured this video of the 4-mile, 9-hour journey. It took a special transporter and a special team of people to make it happen. Hear from them what it's like to shoulder the weight of this moment.
The crawler transporter is it's a machine that goes and picks up the mobile launcher, the SLS rocket. It's basically the cornerstone of the mobile launch concept. Without the crawler, you couldn't transport the mobile launcher and the vehicle from the VAV to the pad or the pad to the VAV. And it was designed and built for the Apollo program, move Saturn V to the launch pad. Since then, we've modified it and used it to move the entire shuttle program. And after the shuttle program, we did extensive modifications, and now it's to be used to move Artemis to the launch pad. The crawler is 136 feet long from end to end. It's 114 feet wide from the truck to the edge of the truck. It weighs 6 million pounds. It has to do 2 miles an hour, but you never want to go that fast. Generally, we're around 83 for SLS. Artemis will be one of the heaviest loads we've ever carried, and one of the tallest loads we've carried. I am exceptionally proud of our team. They're very talented, they're very committed, and they're just all around good team. I think any problem that crops up or anything that comes up, we'll fix it. We'll get moving again. It starts right here with the crawler. So if we do our job and everybody else does theirs, then we're going to have a successful launch. We're going back to this is going to be just fantastic.
Such an impressive team, and the crawler, Kayla. I mean, this is a certificate from the Guinness Book of World Records.
Yeah, it's pretty cool getting the recognized for the heaviest self-powered vehicle in the world at 3,106 tons.
That's amazing. I know. We were just talking about how awesome the crawler is. I mean, it was retrofitted. It was created in the Apollo for the Apollo missions, and it was updated, modified for shuttle, and now it's been modified for Artemis. It's just really an amazing machine, and the people who keep it maintained and operate it. Like, I'm so glad that we could feature them today.
Absolutely.
All right, so we are 48 minutes and counting again from the opening, the 2-hour window we have today. Kayla, if you thought you were excited, you have got to check out this video here.
This is really cool. We got some children from Earth. They're going to come here to the vehicle assembly building. And the administrator and I are jump on the bus and surprise them.
We're going to give them the opportunity to come in and go up the elevator with the rocket. Hey guys, would you like to see a moon rocket? Because it is the future of our country, and indeed the future of the world. And we saw what our space program does for science and technology, engineering, and mathematics. We saw that in the Apollo generation.
All right, guys, what do you think? What I have to achieve today is inspiring this generation. I mean, the more people we need to see up close and personal rocket, it's not inspiring. And I cannot wait for long. America sees our rocket actually launched on a test flight to the moon. You know, it's just going to spark a whole new push for what we are doing.
Best day of my whole life ever. It's going to be incredible. It was a dream come true. Something's definitely going to the moon. I think it's really amazing. I was actually really excited because I have it this close up.
Now we have the Artemis generation. This is a new generation of us going back to the moon to learn and live, and then we're going to Mars.
I told you they were so excited. They're so cute. Their faces. It was amazing.
I think my face looked pretty similar the first time I walked into the VAB and looked up at that. I mean, the building is huge, and standing at the base of the rocket just takes your breath away. The scale of it, 322 feet, especially stacked on its end like that, is just amazing. So I almost relived my first time in the VAB through their eyes.
And it was really cool. There was this opportunity where they got to just ask any questions they wanted. I was there, so they were asking me questions. They were asking the administrator, Bob Cabana as well, and they just hands shot up. They just had questions, and then sometimes I didn't really know the answer. They were like, "Oh, it's this," and I was like, "Oh my God, they know so much, and they're so interested in." I mean, again, this is why we're doing this. This is part of the inspiring the next generation.
Absolutely. Whenever I get a chance to interact with kids, kind of any age, all the way from elementary school up through college, the human spaceflight program and Artemis in particular, I think really captures people's imagination and gets them interested in everything it takes to do something so daring and so complicated.
Yeah. And actually, before we move on, an interesting note about the opening music in that video, it's an original composition called The Artemis Generation, performed by the Cooper School Band Percussion Section of McLean, Virginia. And to continue to inspire the Artemis generation, NASA invited students to take part in a national essay contest, challenging them to imagine what it'd be like to lead a week-long mission to the moon's South Pole. Here's the first winner now.
I gazed out the moon pod window just before it was time to exit. My crew of 3 had been working for years to get here. Our crew consisted of a botanist, an engineer, a doctor, and me, an astrobiologist. We'd been picked because of how well we got along together, with our complementary STEM backgrounds and our naturally up personalities. Houston, this is Artemis Crew 1, initiating airlock sequence, I said over my microphone. Our I looked at my crewmates, and as I stepped on the pod, I felt so gratified, becoming the first woman on the moon. Our purpose was to set up a moon habitat containing 4 things needed to keep a crew safe: oxygen and clean water, a waste disposal system, the veggie project for food, and a protective outside shell with regolith and mycelium. We will build it over the next week, and it will be used by other astronauts for years to come. Embarking on this incredible adventure, I couldn't help but be grateful to be given this opportunity, to the most remarkable crew, and to know that I was a part of the Artemis generation.
So that was beautifully written by Taya Sauer of Laguna, California. And she was one of 3 essay winners. The 2 others were Austin Pritz of Walcott, Indiana, and Amanda Gutierrez of Lincoln, Nebraska. If you want to check out their essays, you can scan the QR code you see. Check out the other 2, again, by scanning this QR code. So right now you're looking live at right outside of Kennedy Space Center's visitor complex. We have plenty of bleachers set out to accommodate, as you can see, a lot of guests that are hoping to see the launch today. So why don't we go in there and check back in with NASA's Joe Martin.
Hi, Megan. Yeah, this place is filling up. You can feel the excitement, people chattering, people sharing stories, people talking. And, we just heard about those Artemis Moonpod essay winners who are part of the Artemis generation. Also joining me tonight from the Artemis generation, we have 2 students who were really able to come down and visit at Kennedy Space Center to watch this launch live tonight. I'm joined here by Denham and Allison. How does it feel to be here tonight?
Really, I was just, when I first found out, I was really nervous. I didn't really know what to expect. Like, we really just looked at each other and we kind of screamed.
Just out of excitement?
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Honestly, it was, like, amazing. It was surreal. Like, that we have this opportunity out of so many people who applied for this. It was, like, outstanding.
And you guys actually got to take a tour of Kennedy Space Center a little bit earlier this week. What was something that you got to see that was really outstanding?
I think it was the shuttle experience, like how it is when the rocket ship goes on up with people in it. It was honestly really fun doing it and learning like how they felt at the moment.
And Denham, what do you think it will watch the world's most powerful rocket launch tonight from just across the river?
Well, really, I don't really know what to expect because I've never really done this before, but I feel like really be outstanding. I might shed a little tear, but I don't really know. Like, I'm really excited to be here, and it's amazing. Like,
it is amazing, and I don't think you're going to be the only one shedding tears tonight. Megan, we're super excited. Eyes on Artemis. We're ready to see the launch.
Thanks so much, guys. Are you ready for more questions from social media? We're getting them in.
Always.
All right, let's take a look at the screen now. We have another celebrity question.
Hey, I'm Kiki Palmer, and I play Izzy Hawthorne in Pixar's Lightyear, and I can't wait to see Artemis 1 launch today. How will going back to the moon pave the way to Mars?
Thank you, Kiki.
Yeah, what an awesome question for tonight. I mean, the return to the moon is going to give us a chance to test all of the capabilities we need to operate on Mars. Mars is really far from home. It's going to take us 6 months just to get there, and that's with ideal planetary alignment and expected advances in propulsion technology. Then we'll spend about a year plus on the surface before it's 6 months home. And so the moon is a lot closer. We can get there in 3 days. The communications delay is much shorter, and so we can really test our operational concepts a lot closer to home. The moon's super far away. It's 250,000 miles, but that's way closer than Mars. So it's going to give us a chance to test all of our technologies so that we know what we need to develop in order to take that next step.
Yeah, we call it the next giant step for a reason. Mars is very, very far, like you said. All right, let's take another question from social media. Kayla, what inspired you to be an astronaut?
My journey was a little bit different than some of my colleagues. I didn't specifically dreaming of becoming an astronaut. I don't know what the barrier was there. I was aware of and inspired by the space program, but I never allowed myself to dream of becoming an astronaut. until I had served on a submarine, actually. I think that operational experience, that's so similar to what we do in the space program. If you think about it, we're sending humans to live, work, and do something of importance in a place where people aren't supposed to be, the depths of the ocean, the vacuum of space. And so I think those experiences gave me the confidence to even dream that I could become an astronaut, and then inspired me to fly in the first place.
And that doesn't deter you, again, like being in a place where, yeah, we're not supposed to be a confined space at that.
Yeah, I think those girls, I got a chance to meet an astronaut after serving on my submarine, Kay Heyer, who's also a Naval Academy graduate, class of 1981. And hearing about her experiences working on the space station really made me, all of a sudden I said, the space station, submarine in space.
Yes.
And it sounds silly, but I never made that connection before. And once I just couldn't stop dreaming about it.
Oh, that's so cool. I love that your story isn't, the typical one, as you said. Okay, I think we have time for one more. Is Snoopy ready and excited?
Of course. I think, like any crew member, Snoopy's been training for this. He knows what to expect in a nominal and an off-nominal launch and all the actions expected of him. So, like any good crew member, he's ready to go.
And he has a suit that's been tailored to him. It's especially made for him the way that the astronaut suits are especially made for them. So, yeah, I think he's ready.
Yeah. Seeing the moon up close, he's ready to go.
So keep those questions coming. Use that hashtag Artemis and or drop in the comments wherever you're watching the podcast. And don't forget the hashtag NASA Moonsnap for your moon-inspired content. Okay, we're now 37 minutes from the opening of our 2-hour launch window today. Check back in with Daryl with the launch team.
Yeah, we've had a couple of years that the launch team has been working, and we have an update on both. The liquid replenished valve out at the mobile launcher. I understand from the launch team that leak has not occurred. The work that is that the work that they did out there remedied the leak. That's good news. And now the liquid hydrogen tank on the core stage is back in replenish at this moment, and the upper stage of the rocket, liquid hydrogen side, is in fast fill. You can see from the graphic there that we are back up to 100% over on the liquid hydrogen side on the right hand of the screen. On the left hand of the screen, you can see we have been in stable replenish for liquid oxygen. Now, with regards to the range, they had an issue to the NASA director with their radar site. Later felt that that was actually a bad Ethernet switch that was cutting out and not providing them the data. The range reported that they will swap out that bad switch, and they're currently working on that. They advised at the time, about a half hour ago, that it would take them about 70 minutes, or about 25 minutes into that work. They did just recently update the NASA test director to say that it's going to take them a little bit longer because they're going to need to re-verify this Ethernet equipment once they have it installed. Again, that work is ongoing, but at the moment, if we were launching right now, the range is no-go as a result of that bad Ethernet switch. The Dolly loop file, which helps us steer the Space Launch System through the upper atmosphere, has been uploaded to the rocket, and so we're good to go there in terms of other configurations that are ongoing. But we are continuing to monitor communication launch team about holding to the top of the window, currently slated for 1:04 a.m. Eastern time. But we do have 2 hours, and we have yet to see whether or not it is enough. That, but we're on their work. When we are back to
Thank you, Daryl. Great news about Kayla and I actually said, wow, that's really great news. So we'll wait on your next update. Back live now to Kennedy Center's Visitor Complex, where we have NASA's Dan Hewitt inside there with a new. Dan, let's focus in on
three major
So we'll jump in here at the top of the first one, launch board system. This is a critical safety feature on Orion, designed to pull the capsule away from the SLS stack in the event of an emergency pad or the way uphill. And it does that using 3 solid rocket motors. The first one, the abort motor, can fire within seconds of automatically detecting an issue, pulling the capsule away to a safe distance. After that, the attitude adjustment motor. This one will fire. We can cancel out any rates, put us into a nice stable glide before we get ready to fire the jettison motor. This is the one that will actually take the launch abort system off of Orion, allowing it to then deploy parachutes and parachute down to safety. I will note the jettison motor, the only one that fires no matter what on a normal mission. It's going to fire once we're high enough in the atmosphere. And for Artemis 1, it is the only motor on this that is active. The attitude and abort motors are inert for Artemis 1. And that's all focused on protecting this, the Orion crew module. This is where you have your astronauts physically inside. In the capsule, you have everything you need to keep crew safe, happy, healthy, thriving in deep space. You have a nice environment, seats, crew displays, toilet, everything that you need. On the outside, a couple of critical features. On the bottom, the heat shield. Remember, this is goal number 1 for this mission, is testing that heat shield. It's an ablative structure made to survive that fiery reentry at the end of a mission. Along the outside, you see these small gray circles. Those are reaction control system thrusters. Orion can use that at the very end to control the yaw, pitch, and roll as it's hurtling through the atmosphere. We have windows. You need windows to look outside. 2 in the front, 2 on the sides, 1 in the side hatch, 1 up top, and the very top docking hatch. Those are different layers of glass and acrylics for pressure and thermal control. We have a docking system, an uprighting system, parachutes, all for the very end of the mission. Third and final piece, down here at the bottom, the European service module. This has all of the propulsion assets for after SLS has done its job. Starting on the bottom, the large orbital maneuvering system engine. This is the one that's providing the most thrust for all of those key maneuvers around the moon. 8 auxiliary thrusters, also around the aft of the bottom part of the service module to provide some additional push as well. And then 24 of these smaller reaction control system thrusters. They can be used for attitude control, which way you're pointing, as well as small translational maneuvers moving side to side. With the vehicle up, 4 solar arrays, each one 24 feet in length, altogether generating 11 kilowatts of electrical power per Orion systems. Inside the service module have tanks for things like the thermal control system, potable water when we have a crew on board, and also pressurized oxygen and nitrogen atmosphere, which gets fed through the crew module along with electrical lines. That's also what's going to separate us at the very end of the mission. So that's Orion. It's going to be making its first flight around the moon on Artemis 1. Can't wait to see it. Take those selfies around our lunar neighbor. Send it back over to you, Megan.
Thanks, Dan. That last component Dan talked about, the European service module provided by the European Space Agency. Let's go to Jasmine for that.
Thank you, Megan. We are back in room 2 with the Launch Control Center. Joining us now is Philippe Delou, ESA's manager for the European Service Module. We have quite a title there. Good job, I'm sure. We are very glad to have you here, and we understand that the European Service Module is powering Orion that's going to send humanity further than ever before. Philippe, how is it to us there?
Good evening, everyone. So, yes, the service module is the propulsion system that contains among the tanks and the pressurization of the system, the engines, 33 engines in total, along with the main engine, which is going to perform the burns to put Orion into the and then back on the trajectory to return to Earth. The other engines are used for attitude correction during, attitude control and trajectory correction during the travel to the moon. In addition to the propulsion system, the service module generates the power and distributes the electricity to the crew module and the service module equipment so that they can operate. And the third function is the thermal control of the system. The service module accommodates radiators to reject the heat that is produced by all the equipment and the crew that will eventually be in the Orion. Finally, not on Artemis 1, but on future Artemis mission, it will have tanks to store the consumable, the water, the oxygen, and nitrogen.
Right. So we understand too that you are monitoring launch here in Fire Room 2 with us, and you also have a team. We're going to bring up a picture of that team right now, or a live look inside ESA's control room in the Netherlands. So, also, what is your team working on today?
Yes. Well, the ESA team is not only back in the Netherlands, it's one aspect, but we have also a significant team in the control room in Johnson, in the MER control room, and their role is to monitor the telemetry from the service module to make sure that all parameters are within their nominal behavior, that the operations are performed also nominally, and for sure identify if something goes wrong, if something goes not nominal. And if something non-nominal is identified, then they will have the role to support the NASA team, troubleshoot the anomaly, and prepare a recommendation to be brought to the mission management team for a decision on how to operate the vehicle forward.
Great. We're really glad to hear that your teams are monitoring here, Johnson and the Netherlands as well. And this has been a huge collaboration. There were 10 countries that contributed to European service module. Can you tell me about that teamwork?
Indeed, it was a real teamwork of about 60 companies across 10 European countries. Well, together with the prime contractor, we have selected the finest companies available in Europe to build the state-of-the-art equipment which is needed to go back to the moon with humans.
Right, we're going back to the moon and farther even beyond. Thank you so much, Philip. Really appreciate being here tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Of course, of course. Megan, back to you.
Now it's time to check back in with Mission Control in Houston. Leah, how are things there?
Things are good over here at Johnson Space Center, which is just one part of an agency-wide effort with many NASA programs doing their part to make future missions a reality. When the first woman and first person of color travel to the moon, they'll be wearing a state-of-the-art launch and entry spacesuit called the Orion Crew Survival System. When the moon, they'll be in another all-new next-gen suit, both being developed at the Johnson Space Center and through partnerships with commercial providers. During those spacewalks, astronauts will collect samples for further study of the moon. The Astromaterials Research and Exploration Science Division at JSC is preparing to receive rocks, soil, and ice collected from the moon's South Pole, which has a unique crater impact history and ice deposits that have never been sampled. And leading the effort to advance capabilities for science, exploration, and commercial development of the moon is the Commercial Lunar Payload Services Initiative, or CLIPS. More than a dozen American companies are developing science investigations and tech demos. Additionally, we need a sustainable presence as the station in orbit to facilitate continuous lunar access and serve as a home base or a jumping off point for new deep space exploration missions. This is where Gateway comes in. It's a multi-purpose lunar space station being developed by a worldwide effort led out of JSC. NASA is again teaming up with international and commercial partners to create this essential component. Artemis and Gateway will enable NASA's Human Research Program to better understand how the human body adapts beyond low Earth orbit, ensuring future astronauts traveling to the moon and Mars have the tools to keep healthy and thrive in new environments. And with that, we're going to turn it back over to Megan and Kayla.
Thank you so much. So Artemis will also facilitate new discoveries about the moon. So to tell us what we're hoping to learn, we have Sarah Noble here. She's the Artemis Lunar Science Lead. Great to have you here.
Thanks.
So tell us about what we know about the moon.
Yeah, so we learned a ton about the moon during Apollo, right, from the samples and the data that we collected. In fact, we're still learning from those samples and data, even today, 50 years later. But then since Apollo, we've actually been studying the moon mostly from above, learning about being more of a global perspective on the moon that we really didn't have during Apollo. And so that's allowed us to ask a lot better questions and to understand where to go to find the answers to them.
Now that we're headed back to the moon, sending human beings as part of the Artemis program, what are we hoping to learn that's new?
Yeah, so we're going to an entirely different part of the moon for Artemis, right? During Apollo, we kind of landed almost in the same place, like 6 times, right in the sort of central near side of the moon. But for Artemis, we're going to go explore a new part of the moon. We're going to go to the South Pole. Some of the oldest rocks on the moon. It's the part of the original crust of the moon. And there's places there that are permanently shadowed. where we think that water and other molecules sort of get trapped, and we really want to understand what those are, and so that we can use them for science and for as a resource.
Sarah, we're also planning to land a rover at the South Pole of the Moon in late 2024. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The Viper rover, the Volatiles Investigating Polar Exploration Rover, is going to go land near the South Pole, and it's actually going to explore some of these permanently shadowed areas. It's going to dip into them, drill down, try to find out what that water is, what else is there, what form that water is, how much is there, so that we can really understand it both from a science perspective, and if we want to use it as a resource, we will understand how to extract it.
So some people might say, we have all these rovers access to machines that can do a lot of the work on the surface of the moon for us. So why is it important to return humans to the moon?
Yeah, it's not an either or proposition, right? There's some things that robots are better at and some things that humans are better at. And it turns out that humans are much better field geologists. We're really much more efficient and better at that. Plus, we can do better. We can deploy more complicated instruments, and we can use tools in ways that it's very difficult for robots to do. So we can collect better samples. And one of the great things is that we can bring back a lot of samples, right? When we do robotic sample return, it's usually a very small amount, but if you look at what we brought back from Apollo, it's a large amount of samples that literally hundreds, probably maybe thousands of scientists have been able to study over the years and over generations, and that's a lot of brain power to put behind those samples.
So again, that's how Artemis and Apollo are different. Now we're utilizing machines and people to hopefully advance. Yeah, perfect. Sarah, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
So in honor of our destination, the moon, we asked you all to create moon-inspired content and share them with us using the hashtag NASA MoonSnap. We got so many full submissions, so why don't we check them out now? That was a really cool look at all the different kinds of cushions, recipes, and also art, and it was great to see what people submitted.
Yeah, it's awesome to see the creativity out there and how people are engaging in so many different ways.
Yeah. So I know that you didn't submit it yet, but you did create a moon snap, so to say. So why don't we take a look at that picture?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite pictures of the moon that I was able to take from orbit. I think for me, it kind of reminds me of that iconic picture of moonrise or Earthrise from the moon from Apollo. And it's kind of that in reverse. I think there's something about seeing the moon from orbit around the Earth that makes it seem a little bit easier to imagine what it'd be like to have that view from the moon looking back at our home planet.
Yeah, you should definitely submit that because that's an amazing photo. Did you take that yourself?
Yeah, out of the cupola window of the space station.
Wow, the resolution's great.
The cameras we have there are incredible.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
So I haven't taken a moon snap, so I've had nothing to submit. So how do you feel about creating a moon snap with me?
Let's do it.
All right, well, take that, if you don't mind lifting it up. And we're just going to snap a photo here. Oh, lighting. Perfect. So I just created a moon snap. I love it. I'm going to share it. And again, this is just to encourage people to really get involved in this mission. So we will continue to collect and share photos. So again, if you have a NASA moon snap, just use that hashtag. Okay, Artemis 1 comes amid a very busy year, an exciting year at NASA. Some of the highlights include 2 more commercial crew launches with SpaceX, Crew 4 in April, and then Crew 5 last month. In May, NASA and Boeing flew OFT-2, the second uncrewed flight test of the Starliner capsule. The goal was to certify the capsule for regular flights to the International Space Station for crewed flight tests next year. In July, we released the first images captured by our James Webb Telescope, and oh my, those are really beautiful, fascinating photos, and they're going to really help us answer some of astronomy's biggest questions about how our universe began. And then in September, we intentionally slammed the DART spacecraft into asteroid Dimorphos. Boom, look at that. And we successfully changed the course. The asteroid wasn't headed for Earth, but the test was to show we could find a planet if needed. Recently, 2 other missions that benefit the Artemis program. Last week, we tested a new inflatable heat shield that could help us eventually land humans on Mars. Just 2 days ago, Capstone arrived at its intended orbit around the moon. The satellite launched New Zealand in June and will now test a unique lunar orbit for a future space station there.
Artemis 1 heralds a new era in the history of human spaceflight. It marks a pivotal next step in humanity's return to the moon, ushering in a new generation of astronauts, technology, and research. This critical flight test sets the course for a bright future at the moon. It represents our ability to safely send Artemis astronauts a critical hardware to lunar orbit. Humanity will experience Artemis in different ways than did Apollo. We will explore new areas of the moon with 21st century materials, technologies, systems, and operations. Gateway will be humanity's first station to orbit the moon. The next generation technology. Gateway will not only provide a deep space outpost for future lunar expeditions, it will also serve as a station for landers, experiments, and supplies. Starting with the core power and habitation elements, Gateway will grow with increasing capability as international partners contribute new habitat and refueling modules, observation windows, external robotics, and more. Gateway will enable longer stays and more science to be conducted on and around the moon than ever before. And one day, it will help set the stage for missions to Mars. A highly skilled first astronauts will be selected for Artemis missions, including the first woman and first person of color to step foot on the moon. Aboard Gateway, the crew will conduct exciting research for a unique deep space vantage point. Gateway will also be a transfer station for astronauts to board innovative human landing systems that will ferry them to and from the lunar surface for exciting scientific expeditions near the South Pole. Once on, astronauts will use expertise in fields like biology and geology to conduct groundbreaking research in modern spacesuits. Using advanced tools, they will drive new rovers investigating lunar terrain and unlock one of the greatest mysteries of our solar system. Artemis 1 cements our ability to send astronauts and go to the moon for years to come. We're going back to the moon. We are Artemis.
As we approach the opening of our 2-hour, we have a special musical performance for you. America the Beautiful, played in honor of the flight test by the Philadelphia Orchestra and Yo-Yo Ma. A truly beautiful performance. It really has me feeling quite emotional right now.
Yeah, perfect tribute for tonight's launch.
You know, it's just, it gives me a sense of pride, really, to just remember that our country continues to lead our nation in space exploration. So, and as such, the White House is closely watching this historic launch. Earlier this year, Vice President Kamala Harris came down to Kennedy Space Center and met with NASA leadership as well as astronauts. She also toured our facilities where teams are working on hardware for future Artemis missions. Before leaving, she signed a piece of the Orion spacecraft that will fly on Artemis 3. She's doing it right there, which will return astronauts to the lunar surface. Okay, Kayla, time for more social questions. So let's take the first one. You know now the drill. It's going to be a celebrity question. Let's take that.
Hey guys, I'm Jack Black, and I'm super excited for the Artemis 1 launch day. I was part of a little movie called Apollo 10 and a Half, A Space-Age Childhood, and I have a few burning queries. Question the first. How is Artemis different than Apollo?
Artemis is different than Apollo because we're returning to the moon, but this time we're going to stay. Mm-hmm. So rather than a short visit where we can do some amazing science, but it was pretty limited, these short visits, kind of a small area of the moon, we're going to the South Pole, and we're going to learn how to live there long term. So we're going to be building habitats, we're going to have rovers, we're going to have all of this infrastructure on the moon supporting scientific discovery, but also that next big step to Mars.
I love seeing celebrities also take part and ask questions because it really shows that this is something that's captivating a lot of people. So that was really fun to see Jack Black. Also, query the first. That was funny. All right, let's go to the second question. How does it feel in space?
Being in space is amazing. I mean, for us launching to orbit around the Earth and then go to the space station where I just was for 6 months, we're in an apparent microgravity environment. So for us, it feels like we're weightless, like we're floating. So you have to relearn how to live and work in that space. But once you get used to it, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we were just talking, Jessica Watkins, another NASA astronaut, was just here. And she was saying that actually when you came back on Earth, that was an adjustment as well because to use living on the space station.
Yeah, the transition was actually a lot harder for me than the transition there because our vestibular systems kind of remapped. We start ignoring all the sensors in our inner ear that tell us how our bodies are moving because the space environment is so strange. But we really need that on Earth to balance and control our bodies. Sure. So when we get back, it takes a couple of days before we feel comfortable again.
Really interesting. Thanks so much for those. Okay, so we are 10 minutes until the opening of our 2-hour launch window today. So why don't we head back over to Daryl. Daryl, tell us what's happening now.
Yeah, Megan, we actually have about 10 minutes before we go into a half-hour hold. That half-hour hold is part of the L clock, and what you see on your monitor now, I believe, is the T clock. So in about 10 minutes, we'll hold for a half hour, and currently the launch team is trying to evaluate how much of a delay may result from some issues that we've been facing over the past hour. Just to recap those, we had a leak in a replenish valve on the mobile launcher that feeds into liquid hydrogen core stage tank. That's been resolved. The leak has been fixed, and we're moving forward. Currently, the upper stage of the rocket, or liquid hydrogen, is roughly 78% at the moment. So that is tracking. Progress continues there. The core stage has been topped off, and now both liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen are 100%, along with the upper stage of the liquid hydrogen side of the equation. So we're just waiting on the complete tanking of the upper stage liquid hydrogen. Now, with regards to the range issue that we had, we just got an update from the range, the 45th Space Wing officer reporting in to the NASA director that the Ethernet switch has been replaced. This problematic switch took down their ability to see radar from one of their assets, which is key in getting acquisition and signal for the flight termination system, if it were to be needed. Of course, a critical system that has to be tested before we can launch. So at the moment, we're looking still at a 1:04 a.m. East Time launch. But it is pretty clear from the work that's ahead that it looks like we're going to slip into that window. How much exactly, we don't have an accurate calculation from the launch team as of right now. But of course, we're anticipating that. So for the moment, you see on your clock now, we are in the T-minus 10-minute hold. We just entered that. And now, roughly, we're looking at 28 minutes to resume terminal count. The launch team will assess what work needs to be done, how that syncs up with the range getting back online with their equipment, and then we should have a new T0 for you soon. That's the latest from Firing Room 1 here at the Kennedy Space Center. Megan, back to you.
So things are obviously still very dynamic. We're going to come back to Daryl as much as possible. Now, to understand where we are going, we have to know where we have been. To do that, we spoke to some of the special few who walked on the moon and those who sent them.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills.
It's been 50 years since we've been to the moon, and we've got a great program called Artemis. We're going back. The Apollo program was a test for the American people that you can do what you set out to do. All it took was turning to it and making it happen.
We are go for mission to the moon at this time. Engines on 5, 4, 3, 2, engines running. Launch commit, liftoff. We have liftoff 49 minutes past the hour.
I think the characteristic that I remember the most of the Saturn V was the noise. The noise was enormous and it was almost impossible to communicate.
We're go, same time, we're go. Tranquility Base here. You go ahead and land it.
The landing to me was a great celebration. The nation was almost euphoric.
There are so many things that we can actually learn about our universe. The spacecraft that we is exploring.
We are a nation of explorers. During Apollo, we were on national TV literally every day because we were doing something visible that Americans could see and they could feel and say, look what we are doing. Now, ours is going to come up and say, look what we are capable of and what we are doing now.
Artemis will stand on the shoulders of Apollo. They're going to have the eyes of the world on them when they start down this trail.
The science of space flight is one that will continue to inspire. Going to the moon generates technology, more communications, more computer technology, more sophistication in manufacturing that help us in everyday life.
We have a generation that is ready, a generation with the technology, a generation with the education. Artemis represents the future in space. It is our next big step, and it's time to take it.
If you're just joining us, welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center, where we are showing you a live look of another visitor center. This is the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. Wow, take a look at all of those people who are there hoping to watch the launch today. You know, this is the visitor center for the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. That center played a crucial role in contributing to the Artemis program. So I'm not surprised that there are a bunch of people there watching. All right, so now we're going to go back to Leah Martin over at Banana Creek. Again, that's right outside of our visitor center, and she's with some other folks who came out to watch today's launch.
Yeah, you know, Megan, we talked about this being America's rocket, right? Every state in the United States has contributed to this rocket, so it should be no surprise that we have people from all over the country joining us here tonight. I'm actually joined by some friends of ours who are joining us from Georgia and Utah. What does it mean to be here tonight to see tonight's launch?
I think it's amazing. I know that tons from all over the United States have helped build the rockets and are here tonight, so it's awesome to know that we all have a little bit of personal ties to the rocket.
And go ahead.
No, I'm just excited to be here because I've been a fan of space travel and going to the moon and back, and I'm glad to see it's happening again later in life.
And you were actually telling me a little bit earlier that you grew up in the Apollo era in the years following those first launches, and now here, how does it feel to be watching the sister probe launch and seeing it at the beginning?
Look at the goosebumps. That tells it all right here. I'm totally thrilled to be here.
Now, and you were actually telling me that you have a personal connection to this rocket as well. You know, some people have worked on it. What do you think it feels like being here? How does it feel for you to see something that's the culmination of so many years of hard work?
Yeah, I think it's crazy when you think about how long it takes to build it and stuff. Like, I wasn't even born last time people tried to get to the moon. So it's awesome. I think it's so exciting, and I cannot wait.
And we have a ton of people who are working it tonight. So on console, we just want to tell them words of encouragement. What more do you have to say?
Oh, I hope it goes tonight.
Megan, back to you.
Go Artemis.
Go Artemis. Yes, I love that. And again, I just love these drone shots that we're showing of all the people who are here ready, hoping, anticipating launch today. So now let's head back over to Dan. So Dan is in the Apollo 75 Center, which is right next to this crowd that you're seeing here. He's inside there, and he's going to tell us more about SLS using interactive state-of-the-art tool we're calling Moon Board.
That's right, Megan, and everybody, welcome back to the moon board. So just to recap, SLS out on the pad, on the mobile launcher. Daryl's been walking you through all of the tanking, all of the preparation. We had that hydrogen leak that was in the base of the mobile service structure here. That's been remedied. We haven't had any issue with those tail vehicles that we were tracking so closely back in August and September. So everything looking really good with SLS. Just to recap, most powerful rocket we have ever built. It's propelled by 2 solid rocket boosters and 4 engines on this core stage. Now, these solid rocket boosters are going to be firing for the first roughly 2 minutes of the flight, a little more than 2 minutes. And we call them solids because of the type of propellant in there. If you forgot it already, it's aluminum powder, ammonium perchlorate, and polyacrylonitrile. It's a binding agent that's inside. Solid propellants are extremely stable. They're very reliable. But once you them, they're going to keep burning. You can't really throttle them up and down like you can with liquid-fueled engines. You can throttle just based off of the distribution. So you basically put more propellant in some areas and less in others as you're trying to really throttle the rocket down, which we do as we go through things like max Q, maximum dynamic pressure. And just a reminder, as these things are firing, they can steer, they can gimbal. The bottom part here, gimbal, just means you can really direct, and they're providing 90% of the steering as SLS is making the flight uphill, and more than 75% of the thrust with those 2 firing at the same time. And again, they're attached to this. This is the core stage, 212 feet tall, the largest single stage we've ever constructed. It's been through the green run test, a lot of preparation for this flight today, and it is propelled by these 4 RS-25 engines. Now, these are liquid-fueled rocket engines. So you have a fuel and an oxidizer. And one of the great things about liquid fuel is you can throttle them in real time. You can kind of like the gas in your car. You can go faster or a little bit slower. So these throttle up to 104% of rated thrust at the time of liftoff. We throttle them down as we go through max use, the maximum amount of pressure on SLS in the way uphill, and then throttle them back up until they've consumed all of their propellants. And they're consuming that propellant at more than 1,500 gallons a second. That is just an astronomical amount of fuel that's running through these engines to produce that thrust. Each of these to 500,000 pounds each during their operations. And of all the different components, we've got this engine block section down here. You have all the associated plumbing, everything to feed those propellants down to these engines. Also, these 2 attached, and that's where we actually take it. So a lot of focus on the previous attempt. They've cooperated spectacularly. Tank first stage. We have about 500,000 gallons of liquid you need those two. And then ignition is what gives you action. Your basically explosion out of those rocket engines. So fully tanked, these are cryogenic fuels, hundreds of degrees below zero. So we've got a spray-on insulation across the entire. It's sitting out in Florida air. It's a little bit warm, but we need to keep those hundreds of degrees below zero. It takes a lot of energy to do that. So the less you have to use to keep them cold, the better, which is why we have that insulation. So we're going to be seeing SOS take the first time tonight as we clear all the issues. This is going to be a heck of a show when this thing launches into the night sky. So with that, send it back over to you, Megan.
You're just joining us. Welcome to NASA's Kennedy Space Center for live launch coverage of This is Megan Cruz, and this is NASA astronaut Kayla Barron. It's been great having you these past 2 hours.
It's been so awesome to be here for this historic launch tonight.
So right now we are awaiting a new T0. The launch team had to work through some issues, and they're doing a great job working through those issues. Now we're just waiting to see a new T0, since we had been aiming for the top of the launch window, which opened does open at 1:04 a.m. Turn time. Now today is a big deal. Apollo 17 in 1922 was the last time humans stepped foot on the moon. That the rocket you see right there behind us, illuminated in the darkness there, is the first step back towards getting us to the moon. Now, Artemis 1 is the first integrated flight test of NASA's deep space exploration systems. That's the ground systems here at Kennedy Space Center, the Space Launch System, or SLS rocket, and the Orion spacecraft. We will send an uncrewed Orion spacecraft farther beyond the moon than any of the Apollo missions before it. For Artemis 2, Orion will have astronauts on board as it orbits the moon. Then future Artemis missions will land the first woman and first person of color on the surface of the moon. So Kayla, why do we want to go back to the moon?
The moon's a super interesting place to study. It can tell us a lot about the Earth, its own formation, but also more about our solar system. And we also want to return this time in an international partnership for a permanent present lunar surface that'll teach us everything we need to know to travel onto Mars.
Mm-hmm. You, I mean, you have the possibility of maybe being set for those futures, because the Artemis program can choose from any of you guys, any of the astronauts.
It's a crazy time to be an NASA astronaut, and that would be real. I think we're all just honored to be a part of the team doing this. We're just a small presentation of all of the amazing human beings around the world that it takes to do something as audacious, return to the moon, learning what we need to go on Mars. So we're all excited to support the program anyway we could. Of course, it would be incredible. So I think we're all dreaming about this movie.
Now, since Mars One is setting the stage for future crews, is there any particular of this 20th mission that is it real?
Yeah, you mentioned that you talked about the brags tonight. Re-end is a really important part of the flight, of course, and we're interested in seeing how it performs in real life. We tested it on the ground, but Orion's going to be coming in faster and hotter than in history. And so we really want to see how the heat shield performs and make sure all the systems can keep the crew safe for that dynamic event.
Yeah, I'll be watching for that too. It's not just about the launch, the 26-day mission, as we said, so we'll be keeping watch over the entire mission. Our course now is very different from what it was during the Apollo era. When Apollo 11 launched, there was only one female engineer in the today's launch of Artemis 1 is led by NASA's first ever female launch director. Take a look at how she and other women across NASA are shattering the ceiling.
I wanted to be an astronaut, a doctor, a fighter pilot. When I was a little girl, I wanted to grow up to be strong and independent. When we were asked to picture of who we want to be when we grew up, I drew an astronaut standing on the surface of the moon. All I thought about was when I was going to NASA. It's a huge honor to be NASA's first female launch director, to be the launch director for Artemis. NASA has so many wonderful women pioneers, so many heroes to me. Some of the most amazing women in my eyes are like Catherine and the other women that you've seen in figures. Sometimes it's difficult to believe that I'm on this side now wearing this blue suit with all of the other astronauts.
representing this iconic image that so inspired and excited me my entire life. Being a South Asian heritage, of Nutella was such a big thing for me growing up. I always loved to sunrise and listen to the people were in the position that I am now. All of these women were pushing their boundaries and doing those practices.
Now there are some fantastic leadership positions that inspire me every day.
So much has changed since the high part. Look at today. It's much more reflection of the world we live in. That's why it's important to have and better background that allows us to everybody on this journey. It doesn't really matter what you look like, you do things and an exciting time. So it's like right now, it's such a huge part of that. We have been to the moon in many years. We have a lot of younger generation folks that have never seen that happen. We will understand so much more of the moon, the Earth, our solar system.
We're going to stay. And to me, that's an amazing idea. The moon's going to be the blueprint for how we go to Mars and out into the solar system and maybe beyond.
It is incredibly exciting to be part of this Artemis team. It still feels pretty surreal to think that I might one day walk on the moon.
To see a woman and a person of color on the surface of the moon, to be able to say that space is for everyone and that we go to space to make life better here on Earth for everyone. I know that tears will be in my eyes.
My message to women and girls out there is to find your passion, whatever that is. Don't let anyone tell you what you can do or can't do. Only you can realize your dreams. Faith is for everyone. And me being in this role helps to send that message. I think that's a great thing. And I just actually love that I don't feel like a woman at NASA. I just feel like a person at NASA.
The women of NASA are Artemis and make a difference every day.
I am NASA's Spacewalk Office Manager. I'm the Program Science for Space Biology. I'm Director of NASA Johnson Space Center. I am Artemis. I am Artemis. 私はアルテミスです。yo soy Artemis. Ana, je suis. Ich bin Artemis.
I am Artemis.
I just love the way that that video ends with you, all these women saying, I am Artemis. What do you think, why is it powerful to just hear those words? Why does that resonate so much?
I think it just represents how far we've come since the Apollo era and how we take advantage of the incredible diversity our country has to offer. Having seats at the table for everyone, space is for everyone. You heard that a few times in the video, and I think we're proving that out every single day in our work, not just at NASA, but with our international partners. I think it's so important to our ability to succeed on these really complex missions.
I thought that was a very powerful video, and I'm glad that people got that message in particular. The person who you saw on that video is Pam Melroy. She's a former astronaut and NASA deputy administrator. So why don't we head over to Jasmine Hopkins, because Pam is there with her now.
Thank you so much, Megan. Yes, I am honored now to be joined by Pam Melroy, NASA Deputy Administrator. This is just a fantastic night. We just saw that powerful video with you among so many great women here at NASA. What is so important about us now being ready to send, the first woman, the first person of color to the moon?
Yeah, I loved watching that video. Just inspires me. Some are my friends, but also they're just such fantastic engineers and scientists and just so many roles at the agency. I've always thought one of the strongest teams that you could ever find is a family, and families of men and women. And so our teams are stronger, I think, when we have that balance and that diversity. So that was exciting. But for me, I was a part of the Apollo generation, and I was very inspired by, Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin and Mike Collins on Apollo 11 and all the Apollo astronauts. I just can't even imagine the inspiration, though, for a little girl. I mean, it never
occurred to me that I wanted to be an astronaut, but of course there were no women astronauts then. I think what's going to happen now with the Artemis generation is that first woman and the first person of color is just going to have a huge impact on the next generation.
Right. We are just watching with bated breath. And I know that it's going to mean so much to little kids to look up to them. And we understand too, this is a huge, when we launch Artemis, it's going to be a global accomplishment. We have the Artemis Accords, which are helping us make sure we explore peacefully. Can you tell us more about those?
Yeah, it's really important, actually, especially because unlike in Apollo, where it was actually just a few countries that had the capability to go to space, now those capabilities are proliferating throughout the world. And so what we do with the rocket is really important, and how we go is just as important. And how we go is as teams and with our partners, and with a sense of the responsibility that we have as we go out into the solar system to do it peacefully for scientific purposes and responsibly.
Right. Pam, you have a great sense of teamwork, and this is definitely not our first time. There's a lot of things that go into testing out a first-time vehicle. There's actually dynamic activity going on right now. So how does this first flight test of SLS compare to other first times? With Shuttle, with Saturn V before that.
Well, I can do even better as a test pilot, right? So there's a history there. In fact, the amazing thing about this is first flight of a first aircraft, you actually taxi it out to the end of the runway and then run down the runway, come back and check all the data. Then you might take off once and go around the pattern and come back and land. This is a little bit like taking off and going to fly a full mission on your very first flight of an aircraft. And so everything has to be right. So this compares is very similar to the experiences that all new rocket developments have, where, it's not just about learning the hardware, that's a big piece of it, but it's also about gelling that team together and your procedures, how you're going to deal with issues that come up, because they will come up. They always come up.
Exactly. And you have that experience as a test pilot, but also as a former astronaut. In that video, we saw you getting your induction into the Astronaut Hall of Fame, which is pretty cool. So what is your perspective, or what advice do you have for the Artemis astronauts, those ones that are going to maybe set foot on the moon?
Oh, well, they don't need my advice. I'd love to elbow them out of the way and go to work. They are fantastic. I'm so proud of all of our astronauts. I was just Jessica, who just came on crew for this generation is. And I think I'm really excited that we're putting science front and center in the Artemis program too. We're going to learn so much about the solar system from the moon and even about the Earth. And so I think the astronauts are really excited about doing that hands-on science, and they are ready to go.
Right, I know they're ready to go, and maybe you are as well. But Artemis 1 is just the beginning, and we have Artemis 2 and on. We're learning so much. What do you think about this forward that we're making right now?
Well, it's really important. This is the Artemis campaign is actually part of a multi-decade effort that we're doing right now, which is really with the goal of creating a blueprint for how we're going to explore with humans and do science throughout the solar system. So we're going to learn through the Artemis campaign on the moon, and then we're going to go demonstrate it on Mars, and then the next destination, who knows where.
Right. We're going so much further than we ever have before. Hannah, Roy, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Go Artemis.
Of course. Go Artemis. Megan, back to you.
Thank you both for that interview. Now, teams over at NASA's Johnson Space Center are also monitoring today's launch attempts. So why don't we go back over there with Leah to tell us what's going on over there.
Thanks, Megan. And you're right, teams here in Mission Control Houston continue to monitor today's events. Again, they will really kick into action once we have liftoff, and they'll remain on console all the way through splashdown. But quickly, I have to show you something, a little show and tell. It makes me look the coolest kid. In school, I've got a moon rock here. I hope you can get a good shot of it. It is from Apollo 15, 1971. And when it was brought back to Earth, it was part of a larger rock. In total, it was 21 pounds. This is, of course, a smaller section of that. But we're looking forward to the Artemis program and being able to go back to the moon so that we can continue to gather these kinds of samples. But this time at the lunar south pole, we've never been there. We never brought samples back from that area. So we're really excited to see what might differ in those samples and the ones that we have here. Now, of course, we've got a whole laboratory of scientists that are able to study all those samples. Just opened some up for the first time earlier this year. So that we're able to test with new technology everything that we can learn about these samples that we brought back now 50 years ago. So hopefully in the next few years, we're bringing some new ones back to use that same experimental process on and tell us a little bit more about the moon. But just had to show this off. Apollo 15 moon rock. We're looking forward to having some Artemis ones here at Space Center. And with that, I will send it back to you at KSC.
You were a cool kid before you even had the moon rock, so. But now you're even a cooler kid. Now the name Artemis was chosen because in Greek mythology, she's the twin sister of Apollo. NASA's Leo Martin is over at the nearby Kennedy Space Center Visitor Complex, where thousands have gathered to watch today's launch attempt.
Hi, Megan. I'm actually joined here tonight by a very special group of guests here from Stennis, visiting Kennedy Space Center. Why don't you tell me, Ryan, what it is that ties you to tonight's launch?
So we were lucky and privileged enough to be able to test the core stage of the SLS rocket that's going to launch today. We got to Green Run, which is a full duration fire. It's a very historic time for us, and it was so exciting to be a part of the 7 years of hard work by a lot of really great people.
And Jack, sorry.
Just so excited to be here to see it.
And Jack, you were actually telling me that you know firsthand, how much work has gone into tonight's launch. What does it feel like here tonight, seeing the integrated on the pad, ready to go?
Man, I'm just incredibly grateful to be a part of this history and just excited to see this thing launch.
And Barry, you were telling me that you know also firsthand, the adversity that these teams have overcome to be here tonight. Do you have a word of encouragement, anything that you'd like to say to the teams all across the United States right now, at Kennedy and at JSC, who are just sitting in these seats ready to get the rocket launched tonight?
Sure, persevere. I mean, it's hard work, and it's so well worth it. We spent many hours doing testing and trying to get ready for this moment, and I think we've forward that information to those guys and also give them the encouragement to continue on to know they can do it.
Thanks, Barry. And I think it was great if just on the count of three, we can give them a great go Artemis. 1, 2, 3.
Go Artemis.
Back to you, Megan.
That was amazing. And that's just, people who were actually able to come here to Florida. There's many people who are joining us from around the world who couldn't make the trip out here. So let's take a look at some of those watch parties. Here's Space Center Houston. It's the visitor center over for Johnson Space Center in Houston. And you can see a lot of people there after hours because that visitor center is closed right now. People are waving. I love it. Wow, look at that. Whatever that is. It's
awesome.
Amazing.
I don't think I've ever noticed that with Space in Houston. Maybe it's new.
I know. But yeah, just look at that crowd. It's really fun to see, again, all of these people who are captivated, young and old, by today's launch attempt and the beginning of the Artemis program. I know that they're probably looking at the clock and wondering when we might see the launch today. So lovely to see all these people.
And there's the Space and Rock Center, where we have a ton of people cheering on tonight for this incredible launch evening.
I love that. They totally look like cheerleaders, and they're embracing it. I love it. And yeah, this is the U.S. Space and Rocket Center. This is the visitor center over in Huntsville, Alabama. As I've said before, Marshall Space Flight Center there is super instrumental in what the Artemis program is doing. They contributed a lot to the mission, so it's nice to see everyone there. And then here is Airbus Bremen, Germany. So Airbus is the main contractor for the European Space Agency, and together the company and ESA, they provided the European Service Module, which is an important part of the Orion spacecraft. So quite a bit of people there. A more reasonable time over there in Germany. It is 7 a.m. So I'm going to say Guten Morgen to them. Did I say it right? Guten Morgen to them over there in Germany again. That's something. All right, so let's get another check on the launch team. Their Daryl Mann, who's inside there, and an update for us.
That's right, Megan. So we are clear to launch a test basically flying that we are extending that we were currently minus 10 and put one launch slipping hold. Test director estimating how